the world seems to be turning against trans rights.
Men need to respect women's wishes and stay in their own places.
The government really does need to step up and provide confidence and clarity to the trans community.
It's been a year since this court ruled that sex under the Equality Act is biological.
The terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
This meant that transgender people would no longer be legally recognised as the gender they identify with when it comes to accessing gender-specific spaces. A decision gender-critical campaigners widely celebrated and the transgender community criticised and feared.
But the government has not issued any guidance on this, leaving businesses unclear on how to interpret the law. So without any guidance from the government, what does this mean for trans people and what does it mean for businesses?
You know, a year on, I don't know what law supports me and doesn't. I don't know what my legal position is.
It's very difficult. It's going to be very difficult in each individual case, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt.
We've been given no guidance and we're stumbling in the dark.
As of April 2026, the government has now said it's received updated guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission and is looking to implement it urgently. But in the meantime, there has been difficulties and confusion for trans people and businesses with single-sex spaces. Some women's-only organisations like the Women's Institute and Girl Guides announced they would be changing their policies in line with the ruling.
The Women's Institute is the largest voluntary women's organisation in the UK. After the ruling, it announced with sincere regret that it would no longer be allowing transgender women to take part.
It is with the utmost sadness that today we must announce we can no longer offer formal membership to transgender women from April 2026. This is not something we would do unless we felt we had no other choice.
In response, dozens of WI branches took the decision to close.
Voting has been completed. We are no longer a Women's Institute group. I really think it would have made a huge difference if the government had spoke on this and issued some guidance. I think organisations, not just the WI, the Girl Guides as well, other single-sex spaces have been completely left in the dark. I was completely floored, devastated, as trans women have been members for over 40 years and are an integral part of the WI. So I'm absolutely devastated that it has come to this, and that we are being forced to leave an organisation that we're very proud to be members of and we have got so much from, but this has to evolve and change.
It's not just organisations that this has impacted. Transgender people across the UK are feeling the blow of the ruling and the lack of government guidance.
It's appalling. The government have created the problem and they are failing to resolve the problem.
Since the ruling last April, have you noticed any changes in the way that you've been treated?
Online, yes. And it's vile. Some of it is vile. It leads to me being called a paedophile or mentally ill online. I don't want to be constantly in the media. I would like just to live my life quietly.
Transgender man Alfie also spoke about the impacts of the ruling on the trans community, as well as frustrations with the lack of guidance.
Lots of people in my life, the trans community, have had really horrific experiences in the last year. I've heard of people being outed at work, people being verbally threatened, physically threatened. All I want to do, and all the trans people in my life want to do, is live a life that everybody else lives. The government does have a real role to play in addressing this and has the power to change this.
Like the Women's Institute, what to do about the single-sex ponds in Hampstead Heath have also been a subject of debate. The women's only pond is currently open to biological and non-biological women.
I know lots of women who won't swim in the pond, myself included. If I can't be sure that it's actually a women-only space, I don't want to go there, and lots of women I know agree with that.
The City of London Corporation in charge of the ponds ran a consultation asking if the ponds should be single-sex facilities, and nearly 90% of respondents disagreed, feeling that they wanted them to remain trans-inclusive.
Something that the transgender community and its supporters widely celebrated. But the gender-critical charity Sex Matters campaigned against the issue and has since won an appeal to legally challenge the policy.
We're very pleased. We're a charity that wants everyone to understand the law and follow the law. So it's great that we're going to be in court and we're going to be able to make the substantive arguments.
The law is on our side, but the government say they're on side, but they refuse to issue the guidance. They tell service providers to get legal advice. So I think it is up to us to tell men who are in women's spaces to leave us alone. The fact that they're choosing to come to the women's pond when they know that that makes lots of women feel uncomfortable shows that they are that it is dangerous for women.
The City of London Corporation has taken the results of the consultation and are reviewing their policy. But can organisations actually be sued for allowing transgender people in single-sex spaces? I spoke to lawyer Peter Byrne about what the law actually says and means in practice.
If it is a single-sex organisation, for example, you have to make sure that that single-sex definition is met, i.e. biological sex, as opposed to extending it further. There are ways round it, but in essence, it is, at this moment, without clear guidance, it is really asking for trouble.
The Women's Institute said that they could no longer legally allow membership to transgender women in light of the judgment. In your legal opinion, is that true?
In my legal opinion, I don't think that is the case. There is potentially always going to be a way around, but in practical terms, I think it would be unachievable for the means of the resources and the potential impact that any complaints would have upon the organisation as a whole.
Trans women in sport has been a focal point within this discussion. In March, the International Olympic Committee announced that transgender women would not be allowed to compete in female Olympic events. But how do women's-only gyms factor into this discussion? Some gyms we approached declined to comment on their policy, saying they were working it out with legal guidance. But martial arts instructor Lisa says she prefers to keep her women's-only classes for biological women.
Biologically, men are stronger. In a combat situation, safety should be paramount, and we need to take into account the differences between transgender women and biological women, and in effect, keep everybody safe. My priority is with the females, the women's only class, and making sure that they're comfortable.
The government promised to issue guidance after the ruling to provide clarity. However, a year on, and they've only now just announced that guidance will be coming after next month's local elections. This is what Women and Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson said at the time of the ruling.
The Supreme Court was clear that provision is on the basis of biological sex. That applies right across the board. But the Equality and Human Rights Commission will also be setting out additional guidance in a statutory code of practice that will ensure that businesses do provide appropriate facilities for all people so that everyone has safe and dignified support.
The government declined our interview request and instead sent us a statement. It said, "We have always been clear that we support the protection of single-sex spaces based on biological sex, and that this ruling brings clarity for women and service providers, such as hospitals, refuges and sports clubs. It is right and responsible that we carefully consider the draft code and its implication for those required to follow it. We have set out our expectation that service providers follow the law as clarified by the ruling and seek specialist legal advice where necessary." Several women's rights groups, including For Women Scotland, who brought the case to the Supreme Court in the first place, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister to ask for action. The letter said, "A year on, women are still waiting for our rights to be fully recognised and upheld in practice. We are still waiting for government departments, local authorities, NHS bodies, regulators and publicly funded organisations to bring their policies in line with the law." Whether it's from the trans community, business owners or gender-critical campaigners, it seems that people don't know where they stand in light of this ruling. So while that's unclear, what is clear is that whatever the government does next is going to be pivotal.